Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Healing Art After Hours. I'm Shauna Robeson with Creating Space Coastal, and in this video, I'm going to be talking about henna art style art or Mehndi. I've heard it both ways. We're going to celebrate all that our hands do by tracing our hands and doing some mandala and henna, Mehndi style art to decorate lovingly our hand, to give gratitude for all that it does. If you're interested in learning how, stay tuned. Let's get started. Okay, so where we're headed tonight, as I mentioned before, and I did post, the journal prompt was write a love letter to your hands. Our hands do so much for us in our lifetime, and sometimes we take them for granted until they get injured and we can't use them. So it's important for us to remember and to have gratitude for all that they do in our life, not only for ourselves, but for others. And this is just an example of what we're going to be doing tonight, maybe a little bit more ornate than this. This is something I did in a journal, but we're going to trace our hands, the shape of our hand, and then we're going to do Mehndi art or henna art, however you want to call it, and decorate our hands. So we're going to practice some of these designs a little bit ahead of time. And then once we've done a little bit of practice, we can decorate our traced hand. Now, a little background of Mehndi or henna. This the name actually comes from the plant, that the paste, they use a paste to make that they put on your hands. And it's actually more almost like cake decorating. It's a thick paste made out from these plants, and it has staining properties, but it also has medicinal properties. It has cooling properties. They've used it, I mean, there's history of possibly over 5,000 and maybe even 9,000 years ago of them using this henna paste. Now, it hasn't become a decorative tool except for more recently, but in the earlier days, it was used for medicinal purposes, for fever, for injury, for protection from the sun. And then at some point they started doing decorative designs. They've even found Egyptian mummies that have had henna on them. So I found that really interesting. And so we're just going to play around. They're beautiful. And now they're used a lot of times for celebrations, for weddings and other types of celebrations. And a lot of these images that they use have a lot of symbolism. Like, for example, paisley is a symbol of fertility and good luck, which, of course, if you're getting married, that's, you might want that if you're interested in being fertile. And then for the lotus flower, that's purity and new beginnings. And for the peacock, which is a symbol of beauty and splendor, and it is offering you a colorful life. And then Ganesha, which is the elephant, is a remover of obstacles. So there wasn't any images of that in this particular book. But these are some examples of what the designs can look like. And you can do, they have kind of mandala patterns and lacy patterns, and you can use these patterns with your mandalas, or use mandalas in these designs. Like here, we have these little mandala signs. Now, obviously, we're not going to take a compass and a protractor and create guidelines on a hand, on flesh. You can do it on your paper if you want to, but I'm going to do a real freestyle because that's how I would do it if I was doing it actually on my hands, because you can't, like I said, you don't want to poke the compass into your hands. But there's some really beautiful, beautiful designs. Now, this book that I'm using is called Mehndi for the Inspired Artist, and 50 contemporary patterns and projects inspired by traditional henna art. And it is by, it actually has a list of people that it's by. Heather Kont Knowlton, Alex Morgan, Akira Qureshi and Sonia Sumera. And I will post this in the YouTube link. I'll post a link to this if you're interested in this particular book. But that's what I've used to inspire some of the designs that I'm going to be sharing tonight. And I just think that they're so fun. I love the flow. And that's a really, you know, it looks like it would be easy to create these flourishes. But I'll tell you what, maybe for some of you, but I've always found flourishes to be kind of challenging. And you know, but they're so gorgeous to add these little, you know, flourishes and things like that in your art and make it look real lacy and real feminine. But I have a hard time making them look organic. But that's why you have to practice. Now, here's an example. I thought this was interesting too. When you first get the dye or the paste put on, it's actually a really dark green. It's hard to tell, like a really deep army green. And then you remove it, it's more red. And then over time, it actually oxidizes. And they last about a week or so, but they oxidize and they turn darker the longer that it sits on your skin after you remove the paste. So I thought that was fascinating too. All right, so let's practice a couple designs here. Now, one of the things I liked about this design is this is a great centerpiece for a mandala if you're trying to do an organic mandala that you're not using any kind of compass or anything, especially using the spiral, because that's a great center. Let's see, let me get my, and it's a simple design, but it's a design that you can, you know, add to just about anything. And it's a great, like I said, great start, a great center to a mandala. I want you guys to see the original, but Now let's get to our hands for those of you who haven't. And you can get as complex as you want. But like I said, I actually really like this design too. This is just like the outer border, and then it's kind of like Zentangle. It's the outer border, and then you start your mandala. Here is the center. Oops, I'm not showing you that. So if you look at this one, this is kind of like your border shape, and then you start your mandala here, and you just fill in your radial patterns from that point, creating the separations and things like that. So just think of it as a little piece of a mandala pie, if you will. And look at all these fun little ornate accents that you can add. All right, let's get to the fun stuff now. Now I'm going to do my hand and pencil first, because sometimes it can go a little bit awry, especially like if you have a ring on or something like that. So I'm going to just use a pencil first, make sure all my fingers are within the border of what I want to draw. And of course, I've got my fingernails in the way too. So you can either use those or you can edit them out if you decide. Depends on which side of the hand you imagine you're doing. You can trace it from this side, even if you want it to represent the palm of your hand. It's just going to be the different hand, if that makes any sense. So this is either the top side of this hand, or it can be the palm of this hand. It's the same shape, depending on what you want it to be. And I'm just going to make a little bit of a wrist, because I think I want some of my design to go. So now that I've got it in pencil, I can go ahead and trace it with my marker. I'm not going to be drawing in any guiding lines. So I'm going to go ahead and erase my pencil lines now, because I'd rather erase it before I do all the drawing. If I was going to do more guidelines with pencil, I would wait, but I don't plan to. So I'm going to go ahead and just get rid of those. And I'm going to go ahead and put in my nails. Now I'm going to start my mandala at the center of the hand, and then my designs will radiate out from there. Now, in this style of doing the mandala, you're really using the layer below as your guide. So instead of having guidelines there, if you're not using them, I'm not, but if you're not using them, really the lower layer that you're going on to is your guide. So you're just trying to line up things either by the distance that you go from that layer. And you're just building. think I was saying before, this is the Canson mixed media. And it does okay, but it's not as smooth as the cardstock that I used for this. So it's got some texture to it. So it's sometimes it, it depends on the paper you're using, but it can make it a little trickier to get some of the lines straight if there's a pattern or something on the paper. And then also with smaller details, if the paper is real absorbent, sometimes it can bleed. Now this is not bleeding too much. If you're trying to use like a Sharpie or something, that's going to bleed a lot more. No, what I'm doing now is I'm using one of my thicker tips, it's one, and I'm just pressing harder and then lightly as I go to try to make graduating sizes in my dots, or let it sit there longer, and then I move it quicker as I want, smaller and smaller. All right, I'm going to stop because we're at 8:30 and I could keep going because it's really fun. I hope you're finding it fun too. But I just have to stop. All right, so there's my hand, my love for my hand. And fun. I don't think I could do this actually on skin, and I certainly couldn't do it with it's a little squeeze, like a little tool like you decorate cake. So I really have a lot of more respect and admiration for those henna artists that are out there. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and pause the. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Healing Art After Hours. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, or share if you find this content helpful. And as always, happy creating.